Meditation is this incredibly simple activity. You are no longer just subject to the thoughts in your mind, but you are now the master of your mental space.
Today we're joined by Ariel Garten, neuroscientist, entrepreneur and creator of Muse, the brain-sensing headband. She's here to share her insights on mindfulness, technology and unlocking the power of the mind.
How did you first come to neuroscience?
I knew about all of the amazing benefits of meditation for the brain, but it was so hard to do.
Why are you so passionate about it?
I believe if the whole world actually meditated, the world that we live in would be a kinder, better place.
And what has meditation brought to you and your life specifically?
Oh, so many things, both from the people who meditated demonstrated significantly improved attention, decreased stress, improved self-regulation of their body. If there's a pain, just be with it. What we're learning is not to empty our mind. What we're learning is to...
Ariel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's so fun to be here.
I'm really excited for today because the topic of discussion is one that I think probably fits with over 95% of all of my audiences across all of channels, including the conference. So it's a very, very exciting thing to dive into, especially with the things that I've learned about myself. So basically, your technology is being used by pro soccer player Lauren Sasselman, UFC fighter Max Griffin, Olympian Mantio Mitchell. How did you first come to neuroscience, and why did you develop such a passion for meditation?
Amazing. So I was trained as a neuroscientist and was also practicing psychotherapist. And so I would be telling my patients as a psychotherapist to meditate, and I myself was a terrible meditator. I was somebody who had a ton of ideas and a ton of passions and multiple businesses and, all these things I wanted to do and build. And I thought the idea of quieting my mind was antithetical. And so, yes, my patients with anxiety, certainly I should teach them to meditate, but like meditation, I couldn't do that. And as a neuroscientist, I knew about all of the amazing benefits of meditation for the brain, but it was so hard to do. And so it was actually in the process of building Muse. So I began working in a research lab in the early 2000s with an early brain-computer interface system. I'm 45, so it's been a long career. And we realized that we could use this technology to help people meditate. We could use a clinical grade EEG that was small and portable and easy to apply. And by teaching people what goes on in their mind during meditation, we could make the practice easy and acceptable and something that even someone like me with a racing mind could do.
I have had this problem my whole life too, in terms of meditation. I found that I was useless at it, but I mean, it took a lot of practice to get there and became a skill. It does become a skill, sorry. So why are you so passionate about it?
So I mean, my dirty little secret is I believe if the whole world actually meditated, if everyone really truly had a meditation practice, the world that we live in would be a kinder, better place. And we as humans would be less self-centered, more effective, better able to self-manage, and also have better self-esteem. Meditation is something that teaches you how to manage your mental state and calm your body. And it's an extraordinary tool both to help your personal performance and our societal evolution.
Yeah, great. Lovely answer. Really lovely answer. I mean, I think, one of the things that I've learned from it, and in fact, the Muse device, which, obviously we'll talk about a little bit later actually, but is one thing that stunned me when I first used it was that when you're setting it up, it's testing the sensors and these bits and pieces. But the thing that really got my attention was close your eyes, take a deep breath, and then it obviously measures your brainwaves, and you can see your body go into a calm state. And I remember thinking the first time, it's like, if I'm in an argument or if there's a heated moment or something or other going on, my automatic response is usually just close my eyes and take a breath. And it's quite funny how intuitively, or my unconscious knew to do that, but not in every situation. And I'm thinking back to a situation for me last week where actually it would have been perfect, where I should have just closed my eyes, taken a deep breath. So it's hard in practice sometimes, but when you have a device that actually guides you, it's fantastic. And what has meditation brought to you and your life specifically?
Oh, so many things, both from the practical to the emotional and relational. So, as I was first building Muse and testing it, I remember that I was working in an open office and everything was distracting. And after testing Muse for 2 or 3 weeks as we were building it, I started to do a long format answer. And for the first time, I got through what would have been hours of work really quickly because every time I was distracted by a light, by a person brushing by me, I was able to say, nope, doesn't matter, back to the task at hand. Nope, doesn't matter, back to the task at hand. So that was, my first feeling of like, oh, there's something here. And then I noticed my cell phone. So this was back in the days of Nokia flip phones. And anytime I would have an emotional response previously, it's like something happy happened, something sad happened, I felt frustrated, I would go to my phone and pull it out and look at it just as like a way to distract from my experience. And I noticed after continuing to meditate with Muse for a while that I put my hand to my phone and I was like, oh, you know what? I don't need to pull it out of my pocket. And then I started like even noticing that I was putting my hand to my phone. I'm like, I don't even need to put my hand there. And I became more aware of my actions and less needing to just follow on these automatic things. Then probably the biggest like penny drop I had, because that was pretty huge. I was like, oh, this was like an addiction that I'm starting to break. But the biggest penny drop came with my husband and the dishwasher. So I don't know about you. I don't know if you have a partner, but one of the biggest pieces of contention in our household is the dishwasher because my husband believes that it needs to be filled in a specific way. And I believe that it really doesn't matter. And I'm sure, like, people out there are saying, oh my God, she doesn't believe that dishwasher matters. And other people are saying, like, yeah, my husband does that too. It's annoying. But it was this moment where he was getting tense about how I had filled the dishwasher, and I thought I had followed his instructions. And he was getting really tense and upset. And he's like, "Why is this in this place here?" And my previous response was to get defensive and annoyed and frustrated, and like just kind of want to go away and leave because I felt like, "Why are you trying to control me like this? I'm good enough." It's like all of the emotions came up around the stupid dishwasher. And he was getting angry. It was like a cup. I can like even see the moment now. He was getting annoyed. And I just had this feeling come up like, oh, this doesn't really matter. Like, oh, I see all this stuff happening. I see the emotions. I see his frustration. And instead of me getting annoyed and just, turning inward and getting kind of grumpy, I could be like, yeah, okay, move the cup. Sorry. I know you care about this. I'm sorry. And it was like, I'm going to like cry as I describe this. It was this unbelievable moment of recognizing all of the emotional overwhelm that would cloud me and the desire to hide my faults. And they just dissipated. Like I could see it from this new vantage point and see it's meaningless and just accept what he thought was the right solution. Which, seems so obvious and logical at this moment. But as we've all had that, that feeling, it's like it's so hard to accept in the time. And so it's been an incredible emotional transformation.
That's a beautiful story. I love that because I think pretty much everyone listening to this episode can relate to those types of moments. I mean, I had very similar a while back with the dining table and cleaning it with the dish sponge. And I was like, can you please, do it my way, basically. And it's just like you create more work, and it became a thing. And I just remember thinking, it's just not about the dish sponge. And it's like, you just need to be able to take a breath. And it's like, I think when one partner has that skill to cut that emotion and just say, okay, I surrender in this moment, like I appreciate it's important to you. Otherwise you have two partners triggering at each other, which then, escalates into something. And it's about a sponge or the dishwasher or a cup or how you do your washing up or whatever it may be. So it's a beautiful moment. And I'm pretty sure, except for the odd, very, very rare couple, I imagine that resonated. So wonderful, wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that. That makes me very happy. So what's happening in someone's brain when they meditate? And, like what makes it so powerful?
Oh, okay. So there's a number of things that happen when we meditate. Although meditation is this incredibly simple activity, you're just focusing your attention on your breath, Your mind wanders away from your breath. You then notice that your mind has wandered and you bring it back. Doing this thing over and over again has incredibly powerful transformations. So, the first thing that happens is you're breathing deeply. And as you're breathing deeply, you are relaxing your body. You're moving from fight or flight into rest and digest. The next thing that happens is that you're actually observing your mind, observing that it has wandered onto a thought, and then saying, hey, I can disengage from this thought and put my attention elsewhere. And that is like a watershed moment. Most of us just go through life with thoughts that are in our head. We're just thinking things, and the things that our brain tells us are often like, you suck, he's awful, why is it going this way? They're negative and uncomfortable thoughts. And sometimes they're repetitive about things that don't matter, like the dishwasher. And when you're able to notice, hey, I'm having this thought and I don't need to be thinking it now, I can take control over my mind, my mental process, and move my mind away from these unhelpful thoughts and just put it onto something that I care about, something that I want to focus on. All of a sudden, in that moment, you fundamentally change the relationship to your thinking. You are no longer just subject to the thoughts in your mind, but you are now the master of your mental space. And that is a profound shift that then has implications into the actual structure of your brain, which we can get into in a minute.
I love your way of communicating and how you make it so visually easy to understand for me as well. So I really hope that the listeners are feeling this too. So thank you for sharing so elegantly. So meditation and mindfulness has been shown to decrease stress by up to 55%, and I think probably more than that, to be quite honest, in my life. And it causes our bodies to release less cortisol, as with several other things that biohackers do. How do you think that this mechanism works?
There's a number of ways the mechanism works. So first of all, what I just described, your mind is on a thought. That thought is stressful. And so stressful thoughts then trigger your amygdala. We'll talk about the amygdala in a minute, to then release cortisol all the way down the hypothalamic pituitary axis, the HPA axis. So amygdala sends messages down the HPA that causes cortisol release in your body. Cortisol then rushes through your body, decreases your size of your blood vessels, increases your energy production, and generally makes you stressed, increases your heart rate, etc. As we meditate, several things happen. One, you're able to move your mind away from stressful thoughts. So you're no longer triggering your amygdala to go through that cycle. You break the cycle. And then two, as we breathe deeply, we are indicating to our vagus nerve that actually everything is fine, everything is safe. And it is then triggering your heart rate to slow down and your body to move into rest and digest. But I want to come to the amygdala for a moment, because this guy's really key. So the amygdala is the part of your brain that's responsible for your fight or flight response. It is constantly scanning the environment and tagging things as threatening. And they could be real threats like fires or muggers, and they could be fake threats, things that don't really matter, like an email that came in or a picture on Instagram that makes you feel self-conscious, or stain on your pants before you go into an interview. And the amygdala's job is to bring your attention to things that could be problematic and threatening. And it does that by locking your attention into it, generating thoughts about the thing, and then generating the physiological reactions associated with those thoughts. So when something's scary, how do we feel? Our heart starts racing, our stomach kind of tenses up, we feel uncomfortable. And that feeling in our body then indicates to us, hey, something's wrong. Oh no. Which then generates more thoughts about that thing, which generates more feeling. Well, what meditation does is it actually downregulates the amygdala. So research shows that even short-term meditators have lower activation in their amygdala, and long-term meditators can even have a decreased size of their amygdala. So it really quiets the amygdala's process. And meditation also allows us to intervene both on the level of the thought and the physiology to say, hey, okay, I don't need that thought. Hey, body, you can calm down. And instead of feeding forward and making you obsessed with the thing that's scary, that's giving you thoughts, that's giving you the cortisol, it intervenes, calms your mind, calms your body, and lets you focus on what matters to you in your day. So dramatic shift in our stress in our body and our relationship to the world.
So I guess watching a movie in bed before you want to sleep that's got killing and stuff is the opposite of meditation in terms of calming things down, and is the opposite of what you want to do before jumping into bed, I guess.
Precisely. And that's actually why meditation before sleep can be so powerful to help you fall asleep. Because so many of us lie there with thoughts that are rolling around in our head, even if we don't watch scary movies. Our amygdala thinks the day is filled with scary movies, or tomorrow might be as well. Like, oh no, that meeting that I have, the thing the person said, the presentation, and our mind races about it. And our amygdala doesn't want to let go because it's like, this is important, this is important. And you're filled with cortisol. And so meditation before bed allows you to go to your thoughts and say, hey, thoughts, shh, quiet down. We don't need you now. You don't need to think about this before bed, and calms the body and decreases the cortisol so you can fall asleep faster and sleep better through the night.
Amazing. There's two things I just want to add here, is that it reminds me when I was studying psychology back in the day, how they taught you the pencil exercise, where you put the pencil in your mouth and bite on it. And it makes you feel like you're smiling and then changes your state. And it's very interesting. It's almost like you tricking your conscious mind is tricking your unconscious mind into thinking it's somewhere it's not, and therefore changing your state. So it's very, very interesting. It feels like if you're in a war zone, sitting, closing your eyes and taking a deep breath is almost impossible. And therefore you wouldn't do it in that context. Therefore, When you're not in that context, using that, it tells your body that you can relax because it's not a war zone, therefore reducing cortisol. That would be my simplified way of putting it, I guess, for the layman. And then on top of that is actually really interesting. There's some work done behind grounding, and I talk about grounding quite a lot, taking your shoes off, standing in the grass, swimming in the sea, whatever, and most people don't do it. Whenever I'm talking on stage, I say, can I have a show of hands of who stood in the garden in the last week? And, you probably get 3 or 4 hands. And, depending on the level of the audience, obviously, in the last 6 months, maybe 1 or 2 hands or whatever. So, but the thing is, there was some interesting data that came out of it. It was when your cortisol is super high, and for instance, people that are having panic attacks or super stressed, when they go outside and stand in the garden and get their shoes off, their cortisol levels come back down to baseline within a few minutes. And then if they had low cortisol, fatigued or whatnot, and they're grounding, it brings it back to baseline. So it's almost like an adaptogen in terms of grounding. So I actually sleep in a Samina sleep system. I don't know if you're familiar with Samina or not, but it's natural wood from Austria. It's no glues, no metals, completely non-toxic latex with, like merino wool, everything's just like the finest. But the funny thing is they've got a magnetic earthing bed sheet. And I often find when I say to people, do you do grounding or whatnot, try a grounding bed sheet. So I imagine the meditation pair along with grounding, so in the garden with your shoes off, or meditating in bed with a grounding bed sheet or something or other, is the fantastic duo, I guess, for reducing cortisol and helping sleep.
It sounds like a perfect pairing.
Yes.
I want to be there right now. And what's amazing is we can take ourselves there in our mind. Once you learn the tool of being able to state shift in your mind and in your body by shifting your mind and calming your body, you can take yourself to places like this. Before we were chatting and you were referencing, being in an argument and then just being able to take a breath and get to that calm space. It's like, yes, once you have this magic power, you can apply it anywhere.
One thing I notice is it's actually really strange, because after this event that happened, semi-recently, I realized that, so I do the Morning Miracles, by Hal Elrod. Great guy. Actually recorded with him a few months ago at the Archangel event when I was in Toronto for Giovanni. But, and I've done this every day pretty much since before COVID. And I'd meditate every day, do my affirmations, my journaling, my stretching and things like this. But I realized that with everything going on, and I was so focused on reading, that I was actually meditating less, or as Hal calls it, silence. And I realized that the days that I meditated, I feel like, that moment in The Matrix when Neo is dodging the punches and everything's in slow motion for him. And yeah, exactly. When I do the meditation, this is how I feel in my day. And should there be anything that's going to raise my cortisol, such as, an argument or, some contention or whatever it may be, or a busy day, I'm Neo. But the days where I've forgotten, and it went for too long actually, where I didn't do the silence and the meditation and actually focused on the reading more, I didn't have that skill. And it occurred to me actually at that point, it's like, I haven't done it enough. And now obviously I meditate or silence, and I find that's very, very great these days. And obviously been using the device now for a few months as well, which is fantastic, which has helped me tailor it. But it really is powerful, right? Really powerful.
And actually, we've done studies with Muse with control situations like just listening to music or reading. There's a study by Baycrest where they had people meditating versus a group reading Khan Academy, so, quiet learning. And the people who meditated demonstrated significantly improved attention, decreased stress, improved self-regulation of their body. And in other studies of meditating with Muse versus just meditating without it, the people meditating with Muse demonstrated improved states of focused attention throughout the day. So there's actually physiological changes in their brain.
It's actually really interesting. Another point, and like you can tell, I really love this topic because I'm sorry to detract it away from you so many times, but it's just I feel like there's so many aha moments or things that are coming along the way. It's that, for instance, before you've driven a car with a speedometer showing 30 kilometers an hour, you don't know what 30 kilometers an hour is, right? And then when you've done it 10, 15, 20, 100 times, you can then have that speedometer taken away. And you know roughly, within a few kilometers an hour, what you've got it. And I think it's the same with, such as, Muse, for example. It's brilliant to keep you back on track, to calibrate of what 30 kilometers an hour is. But without having it, you can't actually, while you can practice for 10, 20, 30 years or for, however many years of meditation practice, I think until you've actually measured it, same with sleep, with, the ultra human ring, or Aura, whichever your flavor is, if you don't know what 100 sleep score feels like and you don't know what 50 feels like, you don't know if you've truly had a good or a bad night. And I think it's the same with this meditation side of things.
Absolutely. I've had so many people tell me like, oh, I've been meditating for years and I didn't have the same benefits as like using Muse for 2 or 3 weeks, because when I did that, I recognized like, oh, this whole time I haven't been meditating. Oh, my mind was just wandering all over the place. And it's so powerful when you can actually have something tell you like, no, actually, this is what you're doing. This is doing it right. It's like having a coach at the gym.
It's funny, isn't it? What we don't measure, we can't manage. And this is measuring your brain states when you're meditating, which brings me on to the point. I really want to discuss the different brain states and, how we can control them better. Like, can you tell us about the 5 major brain waves and what happens with them during meditation?
So most of us spend our day in a range of different EEG states. So brainwaves are the sum total of the neuronal communication in your head, and they can be read on the surface of the head with an electrode, standard EEG. Muse is an EEG device that happens to be very simple and easy to wear, unlike something that you have in a hospital that is big and clunky. And so when you look at the brain's activity, you see it start down at 1.5 hertz, which is incredibly low. And those are slow waves, 1.5 to 3 hertz. You're in slow waves during sleep. So during deep sleep, you are in slow wave activity, and most of your brain is all speaking at once in this nice low frequency. Theta is a state that we can be in waking or in sleep, but predominantly in waking, and it tends to represent more of a dreamlike state when you're mind wandering. Alpha, which is from 8 to 12 hertz, is a fantastic state for our brain to be in. It is one where you are focused and attending to something. You have increased internal sensory processing, and it's seen as a creative state. And it typically happens just before you fall asleep, and it's also the predominant state of meditation. Beta is when your mind is active and thinking and engaged. And high beta is when your mind is sometimes seen as ruminating or worrying or with anxiety. So when we're all in all of these brain waves at every moment because our brains are very complex and communicating in many, many ways. But when you start to see this predominant shift towards high beta, it's possibly an indication of more anxious thinking. And then as you meditate, you shift down into alpha. And in alpha, as you increase your alpha power, the amount of alpha that you have, so the amount of your brain that's all syncing in the same brainwave at once, you come to a very calm and focused state. And it tends to be a very healthy state for your brain to be in that's associated with overall better health for your brain and your body.
Hey guys, if you haven't heard, the Paleo Revival is here. This April in Austin, Texas, the tribe is getting back together again at the Health Optimization Summit. Learn how 35 industry legends like Gary Brecker, Mark Sisson, Ben Greenfield, JJ Virgin and more optimize their health and how you can too. Spend the weekend surrounded by ancestral wisdom, exploring cutting-edge health tech, and connecting with a tribe that makes you feel, yep, like family. Austin, this is long overdue, but the wait is finally over. Get your ticket today at hosummit.com/Austin.
So does meditation help you spend more time in alpha and theta during the rest of the day?
Yes. So as I referenced, there's one study by the Catholic University in Milan, and they had people doing meditation with Muse and versus people meditating without Muse. And they were able to see that those that meditated with Muse had increased time in alpha during their day. So not simply during the meditation, but also like a trait-based response. It became a trait of their brain to be able to stay in this state throughout the course of the day. So individuals who meditate more have an increase in alpha power and are seen as, the characteristic is, better able to self-regulate, stay calm, and stay focused.
So how much extra time in alpha are we talking about?
Oh, that's a good question. So we actually have 2 scores in the app. We have your alpha peak frequency and your brain recharge score, which actually allow you to measure your time in alpha while you meditate with Muse. And one of the things that we saw as we looked at all of our users is that alpha peak frequency tends to decrease with age. So 2 things. So we've been talking about the amplitude of alpha, the amount of alpha that you have, and that's your brain recharge score. And then there's the alpha peak frequency, where in the alpha band you sit. And so when you're younger, you tend to have higher alpha peak frequency. And as you age, that alpha peak frequency decreases. And it's kind of like alpha is the refresh rate of your brain. The higher and stronger it is, the more you're able to be consciously aware and active quickly. And as it slows down, it's associated with your cognitive processes slowing down. And so with Muse, we allow you not just to train your meditation in your alpha state, but also to measure it with your alpha peak frequency and your brain recharge scores.
Interesting point, because if as we age, we have less peak of alpha, and when we're younger, we have higher peak of alpha, it makes me think back to my early 20s when I was so focused and determined in work and nothing got in my way. And as I've got older, I've chilled out a lot more and haven't quite got that same. And it almost feels like I've now got a kind of gauge on that. The one thing is, though, with the use of social media and distractions and instant reward mechanisms being triggered all day, every day for the younger generations, especially, let's say under 40s, because I think in the 45 range age, we were just at the beginning of mobile phones. We had the first part of our lives without phones and devices, and kind of like we're in-betweenies, So it'd be interesting to see someone in their mid to late 40s, such as ourselves, compared to someone that's in their early 20s that's addicted to their Instagram and that doesn't meditate versus us that do. It'd be really interesting to see the results in peak alpha.
Totally interesting. We haven't done that study yet, but that would be a fascinating one to do.
It's actually really like a big thing I was thinking through as you were saying that, because I typically see entrepreneurs or people that are so determined and so focused and seem to have that alpha state dialed in, but then other ones that are addicted to their phones don't. That's really what was ringing true for me during that.
Well, it's true. And one of the things that you experience when you meditate is that you're able to disengage from that addiction, because you recognize it as addiction. So what the addiction cycle is, it's a cycle of anxiety. So you see an image and then you go to put away your phone or think like, oh, I can let it go. But then part of your brain wants the next image. And so it creates a sense of anxiety if you don't see the next image. And so it's like, oh my God, I got to keep going or I feel weird and strange. So you have both the anxiety cycle as well as the dopamine reward cycle. Like, oh, I need to see the next image because I want the dopamine hit. I want the dopamine hit. And what meditation allows you to do is both intervene on the anxiety side, intervene because you're able to actually see what's going on. It's not just an automatic reaction. You're able to slow it down and actually observe. And then you're able to find new rewards in life because you're able to like look around the room and say, hey, I'm present, I'm alive, I'm safe. This is actually really cool to just be. Because so many of us are afraid of just being these days. And the act of sitting in meditation teaches you that it's safe and okay to just be. I'm getting emotional thinking about that one.
It's funny, isn't it? 'Cause we're called human beings, and yet we're more like human doings. And I know this sounds like a cliche saying that, but it's so true. Like, for instance, I guess before meditation or when I'm more relaxed than usual with it, I feel like I should be doing something to feel worthy, whereas and not just being and sitting. And in fact, I'm very cognizant of it. For instance, when I'm on the tube or around and about, and you see people, everyone's on their phone like this, and then you occasionally just see someone just sitting there completely content, just being, not touching a phone, not looking at a book, not listening to music, just nothing. And I'm just like, that is a human being, like literally being. And I think our life is just full of instant rewards all day, every day, that we don't just be, we do. And actually I installed an app on my phone called OneSec, and basically, whenever you open up Instagram or any device, any app that you like, you can set it that it comes up with a game on the screen for you to do so you have the reward to use it. For instance, one of the things is you trace your finger around the screen following a dot for 3 to 5 seconds, and then it allows you access, and you have to set how many minutes you have access for. And I went from, before using this device, average 75 opens a day for Instagram alone, forget the other apps, 75 a day. And bearing in mind a large part of my life was Instagram, up to 2 hours a day. 2 hours a day, right? I installed this app, more cognizant of it. It breaks the pattern. Now I open it up 4 to 5 times a day, and I'm doing 25 to 40 minutes absolute tops, even if I have work. And it's just like, it's great to see how meditation can help you without having that app, and having the both paired. I think that can save a lot of your life.
Yeah. What we end up doing is we fall into automatic patterns. And so, our brains are pattern-seeking animals, pattern-seeking organs, and these patterns make our life easy. And so if there's a pattern like open Instagram, see some pictures, get some dopamine, hit some likes, that's a very rewarding pattern for the brain. Brains like things that are rewarding and simple. And so it just keeps telling us to do that over and over and over again. And what meditation allows you to do is to break the habits and patterns. So when you sit in meditation, the first time you sit for 5 minutes and you're not on Instagram, it's actually kind of awkward because you're like, oh my God, I want to be opening my phone. I want to be doing this thing. And then you say, no, I'm supposed to be sitting here and meditating. I'm supposed to be sitting here and meditating. It's okay, just sit. And you feel all the sensations of the urge that becomes like almost like anxiety provoking, like I need to get to my phone, but you just sit there. And then at the end, 5 minutes have passed and you've sat there and you didn't answer your phone and you didn't die and it's okay. And you didn't check Instagram and it's like 5 minutes went by and you start to repattern your body to say, hey, it's okay to not do this thing. Hey, it's okay to break that habit. And you start to see the actions that you're taking and you can start to see the futility of it. And you've empowered your body with new patterns to not follow the anxiety, to not pick up your phone, and to just choose what you actually want to do.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's really powerful, actually. One thing that I found after a while is that I could reframe from, instead of getting the instant reward every 2 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, it'd be like, well, actually, if I can gamify it and get it to 5 times a day, each time I look, I have 50 notifications instead of 5 or whatever. It's more rewarding because you can then go through and bulk. Okay, done. And then so it actually rewarded myself on the other side. But it is something, it's made to be so, I mean, they use obviously psychology and neuroscience to actually make it more addictive anyway. So you're always fighting against, so it's great to have an extra level of practice in your day.
It's great. I love that hack. And, any hacks that you can use to shift your reward systems so that you can reward positive behaviors that you want instead of negative behaviors that you don't want, you're winning. And that's one of the things that we really, okay, so with Muse, some people may not know how it works, but as you are in focused attention on your breath, you have little birds that chirp. And those little birds are super rewarding for your brain. And we've built a reward mechanism that when you are in your focused attention state, the little birds chirp, and then you're like, oh, I'm doing this right. This is great. This is great. And so it becomes a reward mechanism that keeps you in the positive behavior. And then over time, it graduates. So that little bird chirping, often people get super excited. They're like, yeah, I got a bird. It's awesome. But if you do, then it flies away. Then you're no longer in your meditation state. And so, we then use that to undermine the reward-driven nature of this and actually teach you that, hey, the rewards don't even matter. You can drop down and even level deeper and no longer care about the rewards and also not care about the failures. With Muse, as your mind goes into thinking, you hear a storm pick up. And if you get really frustrated about that storm and angry at that storm, it just gets stormier. But if you just chill out and let the storm go, then you're in meditation and the storm goes away. And so you again learn to not be caught up in your failures and ruminate about them, and not to be caught up in your rewards and chase them in the same way. We're still all highly motivated individuals, but we don't get stuck in that micro reward need. And it allows you into the state of what's called equanimity, okay with what is, happy to just be.
It's actually super interesting because we've obviously got to chase stuff because otherwise we wouldn't achieve much, and we wouldn't have such a fantastic world. It has its problems, but it wouldn't be such a fantastic world full of, beautiful devices that we can use wherever we are and talk to anyone across the world and all this stuff. But at the same time, it's about channeling where your attention goes and what you chase, opposed to default on or off, I guess.
Exactly. Because chasing Instagram constantly takes you away from being able to make the cool things in life that really matter.
Yeah. And only want what everyone has, but you haven't got the time to do it because you're too busy looking at everyone else doing it. It's a vicious cycle. So outside of just meditation, how can measuring the brainwaves impact overall mental health?
Oh, great question. So your brainwaves indicate a fair amount about yourself. So one is sleep. And with Muse, we're able to track sleep far more effectively than an Oura ring or an ultrahuman because we're actually detecting your brainwaves. So we detect sleep as accurately as a sleep lab, as a true polysomnography system. And we're able to tell you not just are you in deep sleep, so delta waves are when you're in deep sleep, but also the depth of your deep sleep, which is the amplitude, the amount of delta waves that you have at that moment. And the deeper your sleep, the more delta activity you have throughout your brain. And that actually correlates with better communication amongst brain regions and better consolidation of memories. So as we start to understand brainwave states and use them, you're able to kind of start to hack different parts of your life, whether it's your sleep, whether it's your focus, your attention.
Have you done much, let's say, brain scanning on people like with bipolar disease or schizophrenia or anything like that to see how their brains are firing specifically?
So not bipolar or schizophrenia, but we have over 200 research studies that have been done with Muse because it's used both as a meditation and sleep tool, but also as a research tool for neuroscientists. And there we have quite a number of studies going with age-related cognitive decline. We have a study running with individuals who are at risk for Alzheimer's but don't yet have Alzheimer's, as well as people with Alzheimer's disease. And one of the things that we see in a brain that is no longer functioning as effectively as, moving into mild cognitive decline is a increase in delta during the day. So you want high delta at night, but if you have high delta during the day, it could mean either you're sleep deprived and your brain is, in that state even when you're awake and you're not feeling very wakeful.
I think I know those people. Sorry. No.
Yes. And it can also be a marker of brain dysfunction. So don't freak out if you see, lots of delta during the day. There's multiple reasons for it. But when we look at age-related cognitive decline, that's one of the things we see, along with a shift in what's called the ERP, the event-related potential. So when you flash a light in somebody's eyes, for example, you see a response in the brain. And as your brain starts to not work as effectively, you begin to see less of the brain regions responsible for that functioning light up at the same time. And what we see is a decrease in the amplitude, the height, and the latency, how long it takes for that response to happen in the brain. So with Muse, we're able to do ERPs in our research. And that's also a feature that eventually will be available to consumer Muse users.
Amazing. Amazing. I mean, I love how it's advancing. I really do, because it's gone from very blunt objects to very precise devices that you can have at home, and that's not a plug, by the way. I mean, it's genuinely amazing how things are progressing. Obviously, depending on our diet, our neurotransmitters are different potentially. And some people that have, different cognitive issues may have a different diet and may not be the right diet for them. For instance, someone that has a double mutation in MTHFR, for instance, may not digest plants enough and need more B12, and therefore missing out on certain neurotransmitters or not having enough of the right foods that create those neurotransmitters. Have you noticed anything in your journey or done any work of how diet affects brainwaves?
So this is not from my work. This is from colleagues' work who look at nutrition and how it relates to the brain. And a few of the key things that are seen. One is saturated fats are bad for your brain. So an increase in saturated fats has been linked to age-related cognitive decline, as well as the potential for stroke. So basically, our brain is filled with arteries and veins, just like our heart is. And so the things that you want to do for your heart, you also want to do for your brain. So heart healthy eating, which means low saturated fats. I know people have various approaches. If you don't eat carbs, maybe you can eat tons of saturated fats. The jury is still out on what this actually means in the long run. But you want to make sure, just like for your body, you eat plenty of vegetables so that you have a range of nutrients, both micro and macro, for your brain. And you want to eat things just like for your heart, like fish oil. So an increase in eating oily fish or taking fish oil supplements has also been demonstrated to reduce the instance of cognitive decline. And interestingly, the consumption of probiotic yogurt, a minimum of twice a week, has been shown to decrease anxiety and depression. So there, of course, truly is a link between your gut and your brain. You have a ton of serotonin in your gut as well as in your brain. And the bacteria in your stomach, the good bacteria, produce factors that become signals for your brain to enter calmer and happier states.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you for sharing. There's a book I read years ago that was Psychobiotics. I'm sure you must have heard of it, but it's very, very interesting. For anyone that has, anxiety, depression, and gut issues, I really recommend having a read of that, because it's a fantastic read, actually.
Totally. And there's also a few good books by Dr. Lisa Mosconi. She's both a nutritionist and a neuroscientist, and they've got lots of fun references on how to eat for your brain.
Amazing. Thank you. We'll stick that in the show notes so people can have a look. So meditation also helps us work on emotional control and self-compassion, how we talk to ourselves. But can it help us deal with more difficult moments or traumas that we've had in our life?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. So trauma, now when we go into capital T trauma, we're talking about a slightly different thing. So if you've had something that's difficult or traumatic happen in your life, it may appear as emotions that are difficult that you want to avoid. If you've had a serious trauma, then when you return to that emotional state, or when you return to that memory, when you get triggered, you have an overwhelming emotional response that shuts you down. So meditation is certainly a frontline approach to dealing with trauma. But if you have extraordinary trauma, something that triggers you in an overwhelming way, you want to go slowly and very gently with yourself. So trauma is a re-triggering of an emotional state that makes you feel like you did at the time when the experience happened, or at least your current interpretation of how you would feel at the time. And so it may, get your body to be super scared. It might feel like somebody's grabbing you if trauma trigger, if that's happened to you, you re-experience it. And what you ultimately come to realize through trauma therapy, which includes tools like meditation, is that in this moment, I'm actually safe. So I'm feeling a overwhelming sensation of emotions, but they're just feelings. It's just emotions representing themselves. And actually, in this moment, I'm like, here in my room safe, and I just read something that seemed kind of scary. So what you are doing is retraining your amygdala to downregulate and chill out. And you're also retraining your body to at first, you're going to have these sensations, and you're going to sit there and say, hey, I'm having these sensations. They're really freaky, but actually everything's okay. Actually, I can, breathe deeply and calm my body and have it be okay. And as you do that over and over, slowly over time, you peel back the onion and you start to realize that these sensations are just sensations. You're not dying. You're not in that situation again. It's okay. And you retrain your body and mind. And it can be, quite intense at the beginning. And that's why it's best, done in the form of true trauma therapy where there's somebody there to guide you and hold your hand. But in situations where it is, less intense, it's certainly something that you can gently and slowly and carefully engage on your own to shift your relationship to those feelings and know that they no longer refer to this present moment and they no longer need to control you.
So it's something that you could potentially, if, depending on the level of trauma, and when I say trauma, I mean more the day-to-day of how you're spoken to as a child and things like that, not necessarily major trauma. But interesting, I mean, I guess in a therapy setting, is probably something that you could do to help manage and grow during sessions. If you were working with a psychotherapist or a therapist of some description, I guess it would be a perfect, adjunct to doing that work. So you're consistently improving and reflecting on those states and the things that you've talked through, I presume.
Yeah. And actually, Muse is widely used by psychiatrists and psychotherapists, recommending it to their patients, both using it in session and between sessions so that they stick with their practice.
Really?
And I mean, it was my background. I was a psychotherapist who would have a patient come in with anxiety, and I would tell them to go meditate, and I would never know if they did it. They would never really know if they did it. And nothing would move forward. And so it's part of how we initially built Muse, as a tool to really get you to start and stick to a practice, like somebody there holding your hand.
That's brilliant. I really love that. I love how, obviously the credentials, your experience and things is brought together with something to hold people accountable in between, which I feel like they feel like they've got a handhold the whole way through, therapy as well. The reason why I speak come from a place of experience. I'm a cognitive hypnotherapist by trade originally, and so all of the behavioral sciences and cognitive hypnotherapy, the various different forms of that, and NLP. So it's very interesting to hear that you say that in between for patients in between sessions. It's brilliant. I really love that. So what are the different types of meditation that you rate most highly?
Oh, great question. Okay, so focused attention meditation, that's when you're putting your attention on a single object, like your breath, or it could even be a candle or a mantra. So focused attention meditation is the one that has the most evidence, and it's the one that really teaches you to observe your mind and then move to another object. Observe your mind and then move to the object of your focus. Breath-focused meditation is just another form of focused attention meditation. Body scans are, again, a form of focused attention meditation where you're focusing on your body, feeling the sensation in your body and moving your mind from part to part. And again, if your mind wanders away, you bring it back so you're conscious of your mind's activity. As I said, mantra-based is a different form of focused attention meditation. In some religious traditions, the mantras that you say have spiritual meaning, which may elevate you in a certain way. In secular traditions, you might be focusing on a word like love or peace, where the word itself also carries a meaning that allows you to further shift. So you're not just moving to a state of calm neutral, but you might be focused on a word or an affirmation. I am good. I love myself, which then adds an additional layer. There's also things like yoga nidra, which is a form of meditation that is really focused on calming the body and helping you fall asleep. There are walking and moving meditations, where the act of moving keeps you engaged and out of your mind. So you might be focused on the feeling of this earth on the soles of your feet. So again, a kind of a focused attention practice, but focused on a moving body and a moving sensation. And then there's meditations where you may be moving your attention around to different objects in the room, for example, listening to the sound of the air conditioner, listening to the sound of the traffic, focusing on the quality of light. And those teach you how to shift your attention and shift what you pay attention to. And then there's more non-dual or conscious awareness meditations where you are actually focusing on the act of existence, and the space between, the air in the room, just the act of, being that. And those are the kinds of meditations that allow you to have kind of transformational shifts where you recognize where you sit in the space of things and in the universe.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I've been in a few altered states that have made me been in that place as well. Not that I'm advocating any of that stuff, but it's very interesting as you're saying that. One of the things that came to mind for me was that walking therapy or walking meditation is actually Dr. Amy Killen and I were once discussing this, how this is her thing. She really loves walking because it helps clear her mind. And for me, I used to be a runner, and for me, running was my meditation. I was miles away. Nothing mattered. Literally, I would just watch my feet one after the other. But the other thing is that one of the things I think it almost feels hypnotic. But when you're like you mentioned, focused attention, for instance, picking out the clock on the wall and watching it tick, it can, that could be a form of meditation. It's also hypnotic, but not necessarily in a positive sense, because you can slow time down, time distortion, and actually things last longer. But also, I think coming from the health space or biohacking spaces, if you've got a headache, if you give it focused attention, you're almost meditating in the direction of a headache and making it worse because you're giving it too much attention, opposed to actually moving it away from that and putting it to something else and helping distract. Whether or not you've got a pain in your leg or a headache or you're cold, you become more and more sorry for yourself the more you give it that focused meditation. You want to move it away from that.
Let's actually dive into that one for a minute. So pain is really interesting because there's two elements of pain. There's the primary pain, the sensation that you're actually feeling in the moment. And then there's the secondary pain, which is all the cogitation that happens around it. So in a true meditation, if you have a pain in your leg, you might just focus on the sensation of pain and just be with that sensation, and then recognize you're not dying. It's okay. I'm feeling a lot of sensation, but it's just sensation. It's okay. Whereas in a non-meditative experience, you might notice the pain in your leg and hyper focus on the pain, but you're not meditating. You then have a bunch of thoughts associated with it that go oh shoot, this effing hurts. I hate this. I'm not going to be able to do this tomorrow. Why did this happen to me? And those are all what we call secondary pain. And it actually exacerbates the sensation of pain because you have these negative thoughts about it. You now have a tense relationship towards it. You dislike it, and it actually can increase the experience or the sensation of pain. And so in true meditation, we often say, if there's a pain, just be with it. And often, sometimes if you are simply with it, that allows it to dissipate, particularly if it's something as simple as a muscle cramp, where the muscle wants to remain tense, and the more you are angry at it, the tenser it becomes. And if you're simply with it, you can just allow it to be and shift your relationship. And at the very least, you might still have your primary pain, but if you lose all the secondary pain, you regain your ability to simply be and go back into life and not be pulled into the depression and discomfort of it.
So we often hear that we need our brains or minds to be empty while we meditate, which is, obviously really tough for many people, but that's not true, is it, really? And, what's going on?
Yeah, so you don't need, this is a totally common misperception. And that's part of what makes meditation so hard, because you're my brain's supposed to be empty, and it never is. The definition of our brain is there's always something happening. And in meditation, particularly things like a focused attention meditation, what we're learning is not to empty our mind. What we're learning is to control our attention. And so as your mind fills with a thought, you learn, hey, I don't need to think that thought. I can move my attention elsewhere onto my breath, which is just pure sensation. It's not thoughts, it's just experience. And so don't worry, your mind will give you another thought immediately after, and then you will notice it and then move your attention. And so it's super okay that you have thoughts. What we're learning to do is shift our relationship to them and be able to choose where we put our attention.
Amazing. Thank you for answering that one. So I just want to touch on Muse quickly before we wrap up today. I mean, it's being used by professional football players and Olympians and UFC fighters. But how does this headset help top tier athletes, up their game?
Oh, awesome. Yeah, we're used by a ton of athletes, which is super awesome. And what athletes use it for is two things. One, for meditation. And what they're doing is focused attention meditation, which then allows them, when they're on the court, to be super focused on what they're doing and to be able to let go of the difficulty and the distraction that intense emotions can bring. So, if the crowd isn't so into you or if you made a mistake, being able to recover from that quickly is key. And so that's what their meditation practice allows them to do. And the other way they use it is sleep. Muse S, as I said, tracks sleep as effectively as a sleep lab. And it also comes with interventions that help you fall asleep. There's a thing called the digital sleeping pill, which you're listening to meditations as you fall asleep, and it actually changes the audio based on your bio and neurofeedback in a way that's designed to help you fall asleep faster. And it can increase sleep quality by 20%. So if you're someone who has difficulty falling asleep or falling back asleep, Muse is amazing.
I really want to try that one. That sounds amazing. It says just the same audio track over and over again, self-adjusting. It sounds fantastic. So, and finally, what do you think about the future of neurotechnology and AI? I had to ask.
The big one. So neurotechnology is thankfully improving and giving us more tools that we can use to understand the brain. So the brain is incredibly complex, and it's very ironic that we people with brains cannot quite figure out what goes on in our own brains. And both, from a thinking perspective, but far more pertinently from a neurochemical, neural connection perspective. Our brains are insanely complex, and it's the kind of complexity that can actually only be decoded by incredible amounts of computational power. So as AI improves, what we've seen is in research labs and in neuroscience research, the ability to actually have a better understanding about how the brain works, what biomarkers for disease actually look like, what state your brain is in throughout the day. And so AI also, with all of its potential pitfalls, one of the great benefits of AI and neurotech is going to be a better understanding of our brains, how to take care of them, how to measure them, how to monitor them, and hopefully how to improve them.
Yeah, I love this. I love where AI and actually healthcare, not sickness care, is actually going well, and also sickness care, to be honest. It's really fantastic to see how obviously it's evolving so fast. There's a lot of money involved in it, and where money is drives innovation, and that innovation is going to do very, very well with in the health industry. So it's fantastic to hear it's happening in neurotechnology. I mean, I saw a clip a few days ago just about AI reading an X-ray and picking up on some inflammation around the pancreas that the physician missed. And, that like picking up things with the pancreas early days is obviously vital. It's a very unforgiving organ, but it's just amazing to see what AI is doing for that sort of thing. So, yeah. Well, Ariel, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope we get to record together again in the near future, because I feel like we could go down so many rabbit holes and explore so many different areas for this. So it's been really nice to have you. So thank you.
Oh, it's my joy and pleasure. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Health Optimization Podcast, and I'm Tim Gray. If you've enjoyed this episode, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe for more. And don't miss the chance to join me and 35 speakers this April in Austin, Texas for the Health Optimization Summit. Tickets are available from hosummit.com/Austin. I cannot wait to get the Paleo Tribe back together again. See you next time, and remember, let's spread the health.